Yo, how's it going everyone? This is Mitchell Mander here, and today we're going to be covering Chapter 58 of Boruto. Yes, this chapter revolves mainly around training, but it was still a pretty interesting chapter overall. So before I get into the review, if you like this type of content and you're new to the channel, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. It'd be pretty cool if you did that. Alrighty, let's get on with the review. Now, I just want to say before I actually get into the chapter, I actually like the title for this chapter. So, normally for Boruto chapters, they're usually like one or two words, like monsters, surprise attack, bro, that kind of stuff. So, not really too descriptive titles for the chapters, just basically like very simple titles. This time around, we got a bit of a mouthful. So, Chapter 58 is titled "The Right Job for Idiots and Bastards." I don't know, I just found it funny. Now anyways, the chapter begins with Naruto and Boruto. They're sitting down, and Naruto has brought those Byakugan pills that Amado gave to them in the previous chapter. Set them on the table, and he's basically talking to Boruto, and he basically explains to him about the pills and the potential side effects of the pills, and that it's his choice. But it's funny because Boruto immediately looks at them, pours a couple of them onto a plate, and immediately swallows a couple of them, which freaks Naruto out, which he gives the funniest expression I think I've ever seen Naruto give. It looks like a gag manga Naruto here. Like, it literally looks like it came straight from a gag manga. It's hilarious. But anyways, Naruto's freaking out. He's like, hey, didn't you pay attention? Yeah, if you eat this, you could potentially die. Why didn't you think this over? And Boruto, this moment I actually really liked in this chapter, because Boruto basically explains that, some shinobi or some people just think differently or faster than others. But I've actually made this decision a long time ago because, yeah, as we saw in a couple chapters back, I think before Boruto went to face off against Ishiki, I remember Sasuke telling Boruto, hey, do you have the resolve to die for the village? And you can see here that Boruto has matured quite a lot, and he's actually willing to take these Byakugan pills. If it means getting rid of Momoshiki and potentially dying, he's willing to do it. So I like Boruto's maturity, and I think his character is progressing really well. I know a lot of people consider him a brat, but in this moment, you see Boruto is very mature, and he made a very, scary decision. And it shows that, hey, I'm not going to allow this to actually harm the people I love and the people I care for. So Boruto's willing to, potentially die for this. So you gotta admire his character and how much he's grown since back in the early days. In addition, I like how Boruto made this decision knowing full well that his karma seal is not going to magically disappear because of these pills. He's already partially Otsutsuki, and it's not like he's going to go back to a normal human being. It's just slowing down the progress, potentially. So I like the fact that Boruto was calm and collected and made his decision. And I like the fact that Naruto, on the other hand, being the caring father he is freaking out and panicking, knowing that this could potentially kill his son. So he was in dad mode when he was freaking out. So, I don't know, this whole scene was great, in my opinion. Now, moving on for the rest of the chapter, and I mean the rest of the chapter, it's basically Team 7 along with Kawaki, and they're doing some training. And Kawaki hears about Boruto taking the Byakugan pills and is immediately angry. Because, hey, didn't we agree to my plan, to implant the Karma Seal on Code? Come on, Boruto, if you die, it's all worth nothing. And Boruto's over here like, hey, I didn't exactly agree to this. We just thought, that was a hypothetical, and it probably won't work. So this is pretty much the best choice that we have at this time for me to suppress the otsification that's going on in my body. So you never know. But I like how throughout this whole chapter, for the rest of the chapter, when it comes to Kawaki, you can just tell that, he has differences in how he wants to take down Kara. And he has differences in opinions between Sarada, Boruto, and Mitsuki when it comes to training. And you get to see this throughout their exchanges. Which, as Boruto and Kawaki are arguing, Sarada pipes in and starts, yelling at the two of them, which Kawaki basically tells her to shut up. So they're not exactly being very friendly to one another in this scene. Oh, and by the way, Konohamaru was back for the first time in 3 years in the manga? I believe the last time he was in the manga was all the way back, around the time Kawaki first came to Konoha. He literally has been absent since that. He was mentioned in chapter 35, but he literally has been absent this whole time. So I was wondering if the guy, was actually doing some training or doing some reflection, considering the amount of L's he's taken in the series so far. Not really sure, but Konohama, I wish he was a little bit more relevant because he's just not doing anything. And he's really, there's not really much he can do. So, I mean, it's nice to see him, but, I don't know. Konohama, I wish you weren't such a disappointment. But the thing is, Kawaki's idea for training isn't like Boruto, Sarada, and Mitsuki. His idea of training is actual combat training, because he was put through hell when he was training under Jigen. And literally because of that, because he wanted to basically destroy Jigen and kill Jigen for what he's done to him his whole life, he gained strength as a result. So Kawaki thinks the same thing's going to happen when they actually do some battle training here. That they're all going to get stronger through basically putting each other through hell. So Kawaki, Mitsuki, and Sarada get into a little bit of a skirmish here, which actually seems to be taking things a bit far. Boruto's actually watching over here. He's like, hey guys, hey Sarada, don't you think you're going a bit too far? Kawaki, don't you think you're going a bit too far? Because Sarada launches like this huge fire style attack on Kawaki, which he dodges. She throws some shuriken, which seemed to hit him, but it turns out it's a shadow clone. And literally Kawaki is actually about ready to stab Sarada, seemingly through the face, which Boruto stops because, yeah, they're both taking it too far, especially Kawaki, who was literally going for the kill, which he says he wasn't going to kill her, but, it did kind of look like he was actually going to cause some major damage there if his attack actually landed. Now, as a quick side note, I want to mention that Mitsuki actually is okay with either type of training, which just seems to fit Mitsuki's character, because if you remember in the early episodes of the anime, I want to say it was like episode 3 or 4, when Mitsuki faced off against Iwabe when Mitsuki first transferred over to the academy. I want to say that Mitsuki took things a bit too far and was actually seriously about to injure Iwabe. I almost called Iwabe Kawaki, by the way. Considering back then everybody thought Iwabe was Kawaki. But regardless, Mitsuki, this fits his personality, so him being okay with either type of training, makes sense. But anyways, back to the chapter. So Boruto and Kawaki decide to spar next, which Boruto says, hey, if I lose, we can stick with your type of training, with combat training. But if I win, we're going to stick to our methods of training. Does that sound good to you? Which Kawaki agrees to this. So they get into a little bit of a sparring match, which they immediately punch each other in the face, which kind of reminded me of the most recent episode where Naruto and Delta punched each other. But anyways, they're fighting, and it's interesting because Kawaki blasts Boruto with a chakra blast from his arm, which Boruto uses his karma seal to absorb the blast, and Boruto retaliates by using his lightning style thunderclap arrow, which Kawaki goes to absorb it, thinking he's got the karma seal, but he doesn't have the karma seal anymore, and it ends up taking the whole brunt of the attack, and is defeated by Boruto. But I like Kawaki's reaction to this, as he realizes that he's been a little bit too dependent on karma, which makes sense because that's been one of his main abilities for years, using the karma seal to absorb attacks. It's something that he's learned since he was a young boy, and he's developed over time, so it makes sense that he subconsciously tried to absorb Boruto's jutsu. So I thought that was interesting, but I like the fact that he acknowledges that, hey, if someone like me could lose like this, how am I going to protect Lord Seventh in the future? Lord Seventh is being targeted by Code and the others, so what am I going to do to protect him? What can I do if I lose him? Because as we know, if Naruto were to die or disappear, a world without Lord Seventh has no meaning to Kawaki. But moving on, Boruto actually talks to Kawaki and basically tells him, hey, we're friends now. Stop trying to do things by yourself. I know that you feel partially responsible for Kara and the others targeting Konoha and my dad, but don't feel like that. We're shinobi, we'll stop the bad guys. So don't try to do things on your own. So Kawaki ends up agreeing and decides to do some training the shinobi way with Boruto and the others. The episode pretty much comes to an end with Naruto basically telling the others to get stronger, with Kawaki himself thinking to himself that he has to get a lot stronger. An interesting way to end this scene and the chapter as a whole. So, yep, chapter 58 comes to a close here. Now, overall, I thought this was a good chapter. I know some people had mixed thoughts when the spoilers came out, but now having read the chapter, I thought this was a good chapter. It was very solid. And I liked the dialogue that went on between the characters in this chapter. And while this chapter did feel kind of short, and it felt like it went really fast, and I'll talk about that more in just a minute, overall, I enjoyed this chapter quite a lot. Now, I mentioned it earlier in the chapter review, but I'm going to once again mention the fact that I appreciate Boruto's character development in this chapter. From the Byakugan pill scene to him talking and interacting with Kawaki, and basically telling them, hey, we're friends, learn to rely on us a little bit more, It's actually some pretty cool development, and I really appreciate that. But on the contrary, you also have Kawaki, and you get to see basically the seeds being planted here. And I could tell it was very subtle in this chapter, but you could tell that Kawaki might actually have some differences with Boruto and the others, and I guess the shinobi way. As we know in chapter 1 and the first episode, he declares that the age of shinobi is over and that he's sent Naruto somewhere. Where that somewhere is, we don't know yet. But the fact of the matter is, Kawaki shows a lot of disagreements with how shinobi do their training and how basically they go about their ways. We just see it very subtle in this chapter. But he still respects Naruto, so the way I see it is I don't think that Kawaki would actually go through with killing Naruto. He probably did something in the first chapter, the first episode, sent Naruto somewhere, maybe to another dimension, or just sealed him away somewhere to just protect him. Because at this point, I can't see Kawaki actually going through and trying to kill Lord Seventh. It doesn't really make much sense anymore. But again, you just see him, disagreeing with how shinobi do training, so this is just the seeds being planted for him, eventually going down the dark path that he potentially does. He also mentions at the end of the chapter that he wants to gain strength. And he wants to do it fast, so maybe this is how he gets the karma seal back, whether it's, a normal karma or a white karma seal. We don't know yet, but it is very interesting to see Kawaki kind of changing here and just the seeds being planted for him, changing in the future. It's very subtle, like I mentioned in this chapter, but you can tell that, things are starting to change and he's having some disagreements with Boruto and the others. Also, can we appreciate Sarada and Mitsuki in this chapter and being in action for the first time in forever? Because we haven't seen them in action since the Boro fight. And that was over a year ago. And I know they appeared 2 chapters ago, but they didn't really do much. So it's nice to see them in action again because it really feels like they're becoming less and less relevant. So it's nice to see them training with Boruto and Kawaki in this chapter. And seeing Sarada as the team leader of Team 7 as she was crowned back during the Boro conflict being brought up here. So hopefully we get to see more of them in the future because, again, it just feels like they're becoming, side characters. That's what they felt like, 2 chapters ago. And it's sad to see that happen, so hopefully they get more and more screen time in the future. Or I should say, panel time for the manga. That all being said, I will say that this chapter did, like I mentioned earlier, it felt really short. It felt like it went by really fast. And considering the fact that all we got in this chapter was, the Boruto and Naruto conversation at the beginning, and then training for the rest of the chapter, it does feel disappointing that we didn't get to see other characters within the chapter, like, Hino Shikacho, Sumire, Amado Katasuke, those characters. And then, of course, Code and Ida, we got to see them on the cover, but they're not in the actual chapter, which, it is a bit annoying considering the fact that they have a plan in motion, and they may not potentially return the manga until next month, so it's like 2 months waiting to see what Code and Ida do. So that is annoying. Who knows what they're going to do or what they're going to do in the next chapter, but, considering, the last year we've been going through the whole, Ishiki conflict, so we were expecting, a battle in the next chapter or something crazy going on. The next chapter, there's really not much that we know what's going to happen. I mean, Code could invade Konoha for all we know, or something crazy could happen, or, there could be some shocking reveals, but when it comes to this chapter being like a bridge between, the previous chapter and, the next chapter, it does feel like there's a lot to be desired. Like there could have been more in this chapter is what I'm trying to say. I like the development between Boruto and Kawaki in this chapter, but at the same time, I feel like there could have been a lot more done with it. That's just my opinion, though. But anyways, that's pretty much all I got for this chapter review. So overall, a good chapter in my opinion. I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10. So guys, in the comment section down below, let me know what you thought of this chapter. Did you enjoy it? What do you think of the training session between Team 7 and Kawaki? What do you think of the scene between Boruto and Naruto at the beginning of the I almost called it an episode, the chapter? Post your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you're new to the channel, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And I'll see you guys later. Take care, everyone.